Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Pit Talk, Pulling Pits and Opinions with your host, Gunny G, where service members help service owners, period. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcasts and on most social media platforms. Let us know how we're doing. Any criticism is good criticism. We got a special guest, a good friend of mine. We served together. Now he's doing bigger and better things. Probably, owning a Fortune 500 company. I probably don't even know. But he'll introduce himself here. Pat Shuman. Go ahead and say hello.
Hey, thanks for having me, Gunny. Good to see you again.
It is good to
Not
see you.
owning a company, by the way, but maybe one day.
Absolutely.
Probably lose all my hair.
We're going to get right into the meat and potatoes. Patrick, Captain. You resigned, right? Did you resign or you retired?
I'm out. Yeah, call me Pat. Don't call me Captain anymore. Those days are behind me.
Pat, I'll tell you what. Let the listeners know where you come from, when you enlist, or when you commissioned, duty stations, where we met, just all that good professional bio, so to speak.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I joined the Marine Corps in 2012. Was when I finished OCS and commissioned December 2012. Went straight through schools, TBS, IOC, became an infantry officer. Spent a couple years at 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines in San Clemente, Camp Pendleton area. Deployed twice on 31st MEU, and then got scooped up in the officer push down to the depot at the end of 2016 when they implemented the Assistant Series Commander billet. So I got sent down to San Diego. I started out as an Assistant Series Commander, worked my way up through Battalion Commander. So did Series Command at my company, Assistant Series Command at my company, Company Command at Lima, 3rd Battalion Op. So got out of the Marine Corps went on terminal leave in June of 2020, and then straight into my grad school. I got my MBA at University of Minnesota. Graduated in 2022. I worked in management consulting for about 2 years at Boston Consulting Group, and am currently at U.S. Steel. I'm working as Chief of Staff role for the Vice President of Finance and Strategy. And that's currently what I'm doing right now. So I met you at my company I'm not sure if I was an ASO or a Series O at the time, but
both, no pun intended.
Yeah, definitely. So standing duty back in the days of everyday duty, pretty much.
Yeah, good times. We had the best crew at that time, to be honest. So I give you that.
We had a solid team back then, for sure.
Yeah. You transition. We'll talk about your transition out of the Marine Corps. How was that for you?
Yeah, I guess like the transition is a hard period to find. In some ways, I'd say it's still kind of happening. I think, but it's been pretty dynamic. Well, I dropped my papers, I think, in December of 2019 to get out, and then a few months later, COVID hit, which made me question whether or not getting out was the right thing. So I got out despite COVID. I was ready to be done. I was kind of sad to see it go too. I think the transition is good to get some time with family. I was able to start a family. I've had 2 kids since I got out.
Congratulations.
Got a new career. Thank you. Recruit training prepared me well for being up all night with kids, but good in the sense of being around with the family, being able to not be gone so much. It's been tough in the sense of there's definitely a loss of sense of purpose that I experienced from it that I think takes a while to adjust to and to kind of find your new purpose. And when I say the transition's kind of ongoing, I would say I don't know if you'll ever find as much sense of purpose as I had in the Marine Corps. Hopefully one day I will. That's probably the biggest adjustment, I think. Working a job in corporate America is very different than being in the Marine Corps. And your sense of purpose is sort of a commitment to shareholders and the employees around you, but it's really financially driven more so than kind of morally driven as much of the underpinnings and your training in the Marine Corps and the culture that binds you together. Very clear sense of purpose in the Marine Corps, a little more on yourself to identify that in the civilian world. And I'd say that's kind of ever evolving thing, whereas in the Marine Corps, it's pretty stable and consistent what your sense of purpose is there. But it's been good. I've been fortunate. I'm healthy. My family's well. I've got a good job, making decent money, so I can't complain. To any of the audience of yours that is like still in or still going through transition, I guess the main thing I would say about transition is it's, I think, a long process for some people, maybe more so than others. For me, I feel like still kind of transitioning in some ways.
Interesting.
I think it's probably.
And when'd you get out there?
I was done. My end of date was August 1st, 2020. So it's been
Oh,
a
right.
little over 4 years. It's been a little over 4 years.
It's it is interesting to hear. Also fascinating because you got out during COVID. How was that for you?
Yeah, it was a little bit intimidating. I was glad to be going to school though. I had school lined up. So that was
Okay.
kind of what helped me stick with the decision to get out. The Marine Corps offered those of us who had dropped papers to leave, they gave us the option to stay because of COVID. So I could have kind of stuck around and extended my time at the depot and like drug it out a little bit. But I had school for 2 years and I was sort of betting on COVID being done by then, which was more or less true. We had come out of lockdowns and the economy was doing okay when I got out of school. So that going straight into school and like, you'll hear people say it's kind of like a cliche at this point, but like have a plan when you transition. My plan was to go to school and to use school as a transition period to help me find what my next career would be. That helped make transition a lot easier for me because I had a really structured program to kind of get on the bus with and 2 years of time to figure out how to not knife hand people and, interact in polite society again. So
Interesting.
yeah,
That's good.
it was good. It was uncertain. There was a lot of uncertainty.
It's definitely stressful. And your family, you 2 kids, how old are they now?
My oldest is just shy of 3.5 right now. And then I've got a 4-month-old at home.
Congrats. Boys, girls?
He turns 4, both boys.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
I'd
Heading
say
to Japan.
I'm going on
got
my
some,
go ahead.
you're still having them. Huh?
Yes.
You're still having kids? Man.
So I had 2 at the time, and we had a big, huge gap
Yeah.
in between. And now I have 3 under 3.
Okay. Because I was going to
So
say,
I
I
have
thought your kids were,
when I had,
I think I remember initial drill and final drill, they were moving around pretty good at that point, right? They're a
yeah,
little
they
older.
were maybe 3rd or 4th and 2nd grade, something like that. Ish, something like
Yeah,
that. I don't
yeah,
remember.
yeah.
And now she's going to turn 17. I have my son, he's going to turn 14 in March. I have my daughter, Aria, she just turned 3 in October. Beckham, my
Yeah.
4th, he's my boy. With anybody under 24 months, you just call him 15 months right now. And
Yeah.
then I have one on the way at the end of February, early March. Will be my 5th one, and then we're probably done at that point. We're kind of old and tired.
I'd imagine you might. Have you said you've been probably done before at some point?
Well, yeah, there was that, that 10-year gap between my
Yeah.
daughter and my
Yeah.
son.
Yeah.
We kind of just like, okay, what's not happening? Easy day. And then we went to Hawaii, and whatever was in the water, it was like ping, ping. And then we got to Washington and boom, another one. I'm like, oh boy. It's been a fascinating ride. So get some, how do you say, grip the bull by its horns, because the boys are easy. Boys are easy. I'll tell you what, girls are another beast. Another
I
beast.
was gonna say, I can't imagine having a 17-year-old girul. I wouldn't know what to do.
You seem pretty
Little boy-
transition, you'll be all right. 'Cause
Yeah.
you're softy on the edge. When I met you as an asshole or whatever it is that you guys say, you're pretty rough on the edge. You're pretty into it, but transitions well. It looks good on you. I'm glad you're doing well. I will say that you have a friend in me. Hey, don't think that there's no purpose or the purpose is hard to find. I see that it's individually based. It's not a group based effort anymore, right? That's what it sounds like. I get
Yeah.
that same message is the same thing. Camaraderie, purpose, the mission set, the taskers, they're gone. And some people struggle with it. We'll weave back in though. Talk about your deployments. Were you married when you were 31st?
Not legally. I was functionally married. We got married in 2018. We've been together since before the Marine Corps though, and the marriage didn't really change anything. So like she lived out there with me and had a relationship, a serious relationship. So
Well, she's legally yours in
Yeah.
50 states, so you're good.
yeah, for sure.
That's what that marriage certificate does. Ownership, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure who owns who. You probably has more ownership at me at this point, especially after having kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm glad you and your family are doing well. Let's talk about the deployment. Deployments up at, you said 2-4. How did that go for you?
They were great. the deployments were a lot of fun on the 31st MU. Everyone's got different deployment experiences. I've heard a lot of people complain about 31st MU. It was like kind of a bummer to not get like a combat deployment or something like that at the time, especially. I think I'm less bummed about it now because, you know, I don't have to carry any of the things that come with a combat deployment with me. But
There you go. Yeah.
the 31st, you know, you practice and you practice and you train and you train. And, you know, it's like kind of like you're practicing and you never get to go and play the game and test yourself fully. So it was like a bit of a bummer in that way at the time. Looking back on it though, like they were an absolute blast. We spent about 4 months on Okinawa in garrison training, doing things like that, getting weekends off, and then 2 months on ship where we do kind of multilateral training exercises with allied nations. So Korean Marines, Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force. We got to float around and hit Liberty ports in various areas and see parts of the world. So really it was kind of like a mixture of going to the gym and hanging out with the boys was like a lot what deployments felt like. So, you know, it's hard to look back on it as anything other than an enriching experience that, you know, made a lot of friends, saw a lot of parts of the world, got to meet some other cultures and train with them. And, yeah, really, really good times. Obviously being in the officers mess on ship too, like the experience is pretty easy from us. I think more challenging being E6 and under, having to fight through the 2-hour chow lines. But yeah, I mean, I can't really say anything bad about the deployments other than, you know, we never really got to truly test our skills, which going into the Marine Corps for me, you know, I went in the Marine Corps heavily influenced by post 9/11. I started looking at the Marine Corps in like 2010. Things were still pretty hot in Afghanistan. And for me, a lot of it was, there's a sense of patriotism for me. But there's also like this really strong desire to go test myself in the most dangerous game, which was probably an immature way of looking at it. But that's kind of where my head was at the time. I wanted to see what I was capable of and really test myself. And yeah, I mean, just to speak to the point of, it was a little disappointing at the time to not go to Afghanistan or something. I think it's probably all for the best in the long run. I'm not where I'm at in life right now. I, you know, don't have any of the weight that you have to carry with that. So, have the most respect for the folks who did carry that weight. And, you know, fortunately for me, I don't have to do that these days. Grateful for my experience. The deployment was an enriching experience for me.
It's good. I'm glad you had fun. You have anybody that actually got kinetic out there?
I've got a handful of classmates that I went through infantry officer course with that had been in Afghanistan. Couple folks I know that were out in the Afghanistan withdrawal was kind of the last thing, sort of the botched withdrawal that we had. So that was, you know, it was a small minority of my class that was in combat. I think it was, we were about halfway through IOC, maybe close to graduating IOC, infantry officers course, when President Obama at the time announced the drawdown and we were pulling back in Afghanistan. So I remember when we were doing our workups and our training, there was a lot of uncertainty about what type of deployment we'd be getting. And there was some kind of musical chairs being played amongst the battalions and the regiments around which battalions would get which deployments. And the folks who really wanted to get over to Afghanistan were sort of like trying to get the, forget what we called them. It was the, maybe IA billets, I think it was what it was called, where like augments where they take an officer out of the battalion and they send him over to like help train the Afghan National Army or something.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the only folks who really went over there. And those billets were looked at as either highly coveted if you really wanted to go, but there's also a ton of suspicion around them because you didn't deploy with your unit. And you were kind of just going to augment a force that you hadn't trained with or worked up with. And you know, that's a whole different story than training with your guys and going all together as a team.
Yeah, it's true. I remember going in 2013 as a corporal on an IA billet. And me and Corporal Garland, we jumped in with Task Force 310, Army Air Force, and they were already 3/4 of the way through. And I'm like, I don't know anybody. We don't know nobody. And then we got split up from each other during the workup, and it was definitely there was a lot of uncertainty, like what's going to happen, blah blah blah, you know. But the IA billets are pretty that's pretty top tier stuff. It's pretty fun. I didn't get to do my MOS, which was pretty cool. I got to work with just a variety of interrogators, a SEAL team, a Ranger team. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, it was pretty dope. I enjoyed my time. I wanted to extend, but it
For
was
sure.
it was time for me to PTSD with Gunny as a sergeant. But anyways,
Yeah.
let's get we were back in. It was fun for you. You got some people that in your network, in your group, that did do that, do that kinetic stuff, that got to see Afghanistan boots on ground type of stuff. In terms of your transition out of the Marine Corps, there was some adversity you faced because you said uncertainty. Let's talk about that, a little bit about adversity there that you faced, even that you face now, trying to find purpose as an individual based advice, a group effort. What are some of the adversities you go through here currently, and if you can remember back in 2020?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll start by talking about like setting the baseline from my time in the Marine Corps. Like I really like, I don't know if I realized how much I enjoyed this and how much it energized me to be in the Marine Corps and the type of environment, whether it was in the infantry battalion or in the schoolhouse or even at the depot, where you're immersed in your environment. Like you're going to the field in the infantry, you're going on these deployments, you're with your team that you spend 24/7 with, you're doing really hard things, you're out there suffering together, you're training, you're getting better, you're getting sharper physically, mentally, like everyone's on the same path. You have the same sort of ethos, warrior ethos, and like you're bound by this warrior code, so to speak. And like you're just a gelled, unified team that you come together through this training and the suffering and this hardship that oftentimes is artificially induced to develop that type of cohesion and that bond and that sense of purpose. And like that was, highlight of the Marine Corps experience for me. And that really helped make me tick and, gave me the will to wake up and persevere through adverse conditions or challenges. I had a real clear sense of purpose because of all those things. I was in a leadership position. I had responsibilities. People depended on me. And it made it very easy to not be bogged down by uncertainty, adversity, physical hardship, mental hardship, any of those things that come along through life or in operations. And then you leave the Marine Corps and, I had a plan to go to school, like goals for my life, to start a family. And those things have been successful. I graduated school, family started, I've got a house, like things are going well as far as the plan goes. But that sort of like going to work with the boys every day, like knowing what to expect from the people you work with because you're the super tight-knit team, it's just not there anymore. And I think the biggest adversity I had, which I didn't expect, and this was uncertainty, adversity, all kind of mixed together, is like due to COVID, it was really hard to connect with people during that transition period. Everything was in lockdown, school was remote, the economy was sort of really volatile. It like boomed really hard and then it crashed really hard. And being an MBA, like trying to get a job in corporate America in that environment is difficult because corporations are cutting costs or they're trying to grow and they're kind of going back and forth. So the two big points of adversity I would say I faced was one, the loss of community, the loss of my tribe. And I stayed in contact with the boys and that helped a lot, but it was hard to establish a new tribe in the COVID environment where everybody was remote and I wasn't going to classes in person because it didn't exist. And then there's no happy hours or any of that sort of like camaraderie, team building type of events that you normally would get because of the COVID lockdown. So kind of being on transition and like sitting in front of a Zoom screen, learning about finance was educational, but not exactly filling up the cup from like a camaraderie teamwork, if that makes sense. And then I took a job at Boston Consulting Group. Really fortunate to get that job. It's a really good job, really good career accelerator, but it was maybe not the best choice for me from a culture fit perspective. I think I learned a lesson there that you gotta go to a place where you fit in naturally without having to alter your personality or hold yourself back or anything. That environment is one where they want really highly polished people that it's actually not that different from the military in the sense where they want to train you to be, as a new consultant, they want you to be interchangeable with all of the other consultants. And the values of a consultant are very different than the values of someone in the Marine Corps. You're in a client service and you're trying to give the client what they want, tell them what they want to hear. You're trying to make them money too, but really you're trying to make your client happy. I have learned about myself that I'm more of a contrarian, and I like to point out flaws and problems and hedge on risks and like poke holes in things. And that was like a big part of what I did in the Marine Corps, developing operational plans, poke holes in plans, trying to improve them. And sort of my natural tendencies to do that didn't land the best with some of the client services we were doing. And I had to figure out how to transition from being more contrarian to polishing a response that made people feel good about what they were hearing. And I've never really to prioritize other folks' feelings over than what I think the truth is or what I think the right objective going forward was. And it was a building experience for me because I learned some things about myself and I learned some things about the right way to make job selections as well. So don't regret it at all, but it was a really challenging adjustment to go from the Marine Corps to remote school to like a 95% travel management consultant role. A bit of a fish out of water, really steep learning curve, building experience, but it was certainly adverse. I was gone from my family. I had a young child. It was hard for my wife at home. I didn't feel connected to a lot of my coworkers, largely in part because of the culture fit, largely in part because you switch projects every 8 to 12 weeks in consulting. So you're never working with the same team. So it's hard to develop a depth of relationships. Things felt transactional. It was all foreign to me. In the Marine Corps, trying to build deep, trusting relationships with my team. And, you're preparing to like go into dynamic and kinetic situations where you have to count on people to do things that maybe are against their own physical welfare in order to accomplish a mission. You transition from that to like, let's see how we can navigate the politics of corporate America to have the best financial outcome for the client while getting ourselves ahead. And that created adversity for myself with aligning my own values to what I was doing. And then the absolute time commitment with travel and just being gone from my family created adversity at home. So one of the things I really missed during that period of adversity was the sense of purpose I had. I knew my sense of purpose in taking this job was to make money, to build some experience, and to further my career, which I would say they're important purposes, but they don't hold the same water that the purpose of being a Marine officer does when you're training recruits and imbuing them with warfighting spirit to accomplish the mission, and that you have in the Marine Corps where you're going out deploying forward, you're preparing, you're being ready to fight the nation's battles. Like those are just much higher level purpose type things. I felt the vacuum of that. And the adversity for me was, what is it that's going to keep me motivated and going through this period of adversity? And it was just like, it came down to pure discipline that kept me going at that time, which I'd say, like, thanks to the Marine Corps, I had that sort of pure discipline built up. But I didn't have to rely on pure discipline in the Marine Corps because I was genuinely pretty energized by what I was doing and the sense of purpose I had. So
Yeah,
pretty long-winded answer to your question, I think.
it's a well-versed answer. I think you figure out in adversity who you truly are and what is it that you fall back on. And it sounds like you fall back on the basics that were instilled in you. Maybe not so much because you were already an adult when you came in, but it definitely amplified the abilities that you had as an individual. And I think brilliance in the basics that's what it sounds like to me. Back to what you knew was going to work, and discipline was one. Right? So
Yeah.
that's good. I appreciate that good gouge, Pat. I got a question for you. Where you at now? What state? Where you at home at?
Yeah, I'm at home right now. Work mostly remote at my current job, with a little bit of travel just so that I can have human interactions from time to time. But I live in this little town called Andover. It's about 30 minutes northwest of Minneapolis. And the reason I live here is because this is actually kind of a cliche in Minneapolis, but my wife is from Minnesota, married a Minnesota girl and moved to Minnesota as a result. There's a lot of folks like me like that in the area, but yeah, it's great. We live pretty near family and I have a lot more time with my kids right now, which I think is the appropriate place for me with my personal values at this point in life. So
It's awesome.
The two little ones at home, you don't get that time back. And, I'm in a good spot with where I'm at currently.
Yeah, even though it was hard for you to get out, it all worked out.
It
Perfect.
did.
Perfect
Yeah.
timing.
It did. Yeah. It
Everything
did.
serves a purpose, man. It's awesome that you get to spend time with your kids in that way, quality time, and a lot of time, which is good because you get to work from home. It sounds like you're the epitome of transition. You're doing great.
Yeah, I think I'm doing objectively really well. I have the type of mind where, I sort of torture myself because no matter how good things can be for me, I'm always looking to what's next or what I'm missing. Maybe that's another part of the adversity that I inflict on myself. No matter, like, I think, it's good to hear that, it sounds objectively like the transition's gone well for me. I feel like that's accurate. I'd say transition has gone well to me. I don't think the place that I'm in right now will be where I'm at forever. I'm always looking to grow and do the next thing. And I have probably a comfortable level of angst or uncertainty about how to get to that next level that pretty much always exists. So I think that's a good thing, though. I think, there's a transition from the Marine Corps to civilian life, and I'd say I've probably successfully accomplished that. But I think life is really, for me anyway, it's always a transition. There's always some sort of transition occurring. I'm never really sitting in one place for too long and never really doing the same thing for too long. So I may be a glutton for punishment, but I think that's also kind of the essence of growth. And, you got to keep your feet moving and onward and upward.
That's good. Oh man, it's good gouge too as well. I was gonna roll into my next question of the pros and cons of transition for you, but you hit them on the nail already, nail on the head pretty well. Purpose. You talk about one of the cons. You lose purpose. The mission set, the taskers, the team oriented type of mission, or just in general with the boys, right? And
Yeah.
then obviously the con was like the same. It's all the one and the same. You lose the network, you lose the dudes, and it's just you now, and it's almost like you against the world. I mean, obviously you, your wife, your family, what you've established. We got to hit, and that piece right there is people struggle with a lot more than we have a conversation about. Dudes transition, men and women transition from the service. They lose the tasks, they lose the missions, they lose the dudes around them and dudettes around them, and they lose purpose and they can't find it no more. And we're struggling with mental health now and suicide more than anything. And we gotta weave it back in, Pat, and we gotta use the tools that made us successful and made you objectively successful, right? And got you where you're at now. What are some tools that you use for yourself and speak to that human aspect?
Yeah, I think the mental health struggles and the suicide thing, I think about that a lot. It's hit close to home. There's a good number of folks in our network that we know mutually that, are part of that 22 a day statistic.
Mhm.
And I'm sure we both have a good number of folks that we know that aren't mutual networks that's happened to as well. That always seems to bubble its way up a couple times a year, back into the, spotlight, causes me to think about it quite a bit. And I think, I think everybody who is able to make it work and find like a good place mentally, probably has different approach. For me, there's really been two very tangible tools that have been successful when I have better mental health and frequent exercise. Losing the exercise as part of your day in the military makes it challenging to stay up with exercise. I've got 2 kids, a wife, a house, a pretty demanding job, even though I'm not traveling all the time and consulting. And it's easy for exercise to fall by the wayside. You really need to prioritize it. And for me, like, exercising is the most critical thing to maintaining energy and like good mental health. That's the number one most important thing I can do. And the second thing is not drinking, or not drinking much at least. I'd love to have a good bourbon and I love to have a few drinks. I spent a lot of time drinking when I first got out, when I was in school during the COVID lockups. I had a surgery to fix a hip injury I had, so I wasn't able to work out. And those were some of the hardest times because you combine not working out with drinking and not being around people. And it was tough. So what I learned through that period was, like, I fixed my hip. I got back into a place where I was able to exercise again, figure out what type of exercise I could do. So staying up on top of like the self-improvement, the self-care. Exercise produces nature's antidepressants. You have endorphins. It makes you feel good. And it drives you to make healthier life decisions, like not drinking and eating well. So I'd say the 2 main things are exercise and not drinking. A third main thing is, and this is probably the more challenging one, the other 2 you can do on your own through discipline and willpower: exercise and not drinking, that is. But the third thing is you got to find your tribe, which is another phrase that's kind of a cliche for transitioning vets. Like your tribe in the Marine Corps is your unit. You and the folks that you were in units with previously, and you're bound through that sense of purpose you're talking about. And when you get out, it's difficult to find a tribe. As an adult, it's difficult to kind of make friends and who've lived in the same area forever. They're all friends with people from high school. Finding ways to get engaged with causes that you align with, or to find people that you click well with, is really important. And this is another good reason to exercise, because I think a lot of people find this by going to gyms. You'll generally find pretty good alignment if you go to gyms. I have gone to CrossFit gym a little bit, and those folks really work out a lot together, and you can find some good camaraderie, and a lot of vets go to these type of gyms too. So that's one good way. Another good way is, the path of employment. If you are fortunate enough to be able to make choices on where you work, and you're not just making the decision based on making a livelihood, which is, you always want to try to get to the place where you're choosing where you work and you're not just trying to survive, but you really got to pick a place where you click well with those around you, because you spend so much time at work that you want to be able to develop a type of relationship with folks. But I will say to anybody in the audience that's listening, if you're going into corporate America, it's not a viable path to expect the people you work with to be your tribe. It just isn't. Corporate America looks at employees as expendable resources, and they're very quick to downsize, to make changes, and people are very in it for career advancement. I guess I was hoping that I would find a place where my coworkers would be my tribe, and I'm much closer to that at my current company. I really like the people I work with. There's a natural clicking that happens, but it's not enough in itself to give you that sort of support network and friend group or tribe, so to speak. So that's one of the things that has really been challenging. There's just not enough time in the day for me to manage the family, manage work. I have some other extracurriculars I do that help out with this. I'm sit on planning and zoning commission for city government, and I have some folks that I connect with through that. But at the point with all the, you know better than anybody, the 5 kids, it's hard to chisel out time to go do stuff for yourself. To the degree which you can dedicate time to extracurricular sports like intramural sports or something like that, or going to a gym, or being part of a nonprofit group or something. I've done some work with the Minnesota Assistance Council for Veterans, where we help with homeless veterans, building homes for them and stuff. That's another good way. I've made some connections. But trying to build a tribe is really important. So to boil it all down, the 3 things is 2 of them. The first 2 you can do on your own through will and discipline, which is exercise and don't drink, don't do a ton of drugs. You got to take care of yourself and be healthy. You want to have a healthy mindset and healthy body, and you want to exercise. Those 2 things you can do on your own. And then the third thing is finding a tribe. So that's a little more challenging. I don't have a formula for that, but that one is definitely really helpful to have people in a support group. Being by family is probably the best way you could do it.
That's good. That's good. Don't drink, exercise, and find a tribe. Find purpose with the same people that believe the same things, similar things to you, culturally speaking and ideologically speaking. That's good. That's good, because I talk to a lot of servicemen with the same type of advice, different here and there based on their experience. But the one thing is the tribe. Constant with transitioning servicemen, then it's tribe. Where do I find my tribe? You just got to take that 30-inch step forward, and I promise you'll find it. You just look, if you scroll in your electronic Rolodex, I promise every single one that you met while you were in the service, that's your tribe. It's consistently going to be your tribe, because I know that I can call somebody that I haven't talked to in a couple of years and pick up where we left off. Right? I think the same mental state. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think self-reflecting, I could probably be better at that as well. I probably don't reach out as much as I should to folks that I served with, but I sometimes do, and sometimes they reach out to me, and no matter who it is or when they call, it's always a pleasure to catch up and chat with them. So it's nothing but good when that happens. I completely agree with that. It's good to stay connected to where you came from, and it's always a feel-good thing when that occurs.
Absolutely, Pat. It's good to hear from you. It's good that you're doing well. I'm glad that you're doing well. You and your family. Say hello to your wife and your kids for me. If you need anything, let me know. You got me in your electronic Rolodex, so there's no excuse now for both of us not to connect every once in a while. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Patrick Shuman, Gunny G on Pit Talk, pulling pits and opinions with the service members help service members, period. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcast and on most social media platforms. Let us know how we're doing. Any criticism, good criticism. Ladies and gentlemen, me and Pat, we out. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks,
all right?
Gunny.
No worries, man. Absolutely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Pit Talk is a podcast featuring active service members who discuss their thoughts and opinions on various issues surrounding military life, current events, and history. The statements heard here are the opinions of its members and guests. These do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense and are not endorsed or sponsored in any way. Listener, viewer discretion advised.